Welcome in. We're going to go ahead and get started. Tonight's topic is going to be when bullying starts at home. I thought since the whole Kendra Lakari story is big on TikTok, we would talk about the impact of bullying on kids who basically experience their first bully at home. So we are going to get started in exactly 2 minutes. Let me know where you're tuning in from. You don't have to give me an exact location. You can tell me the state, or if you're in the US, West Coast, East Coast, whatever you want to let me know. I am going to pull up my notes so we can go ahead and get started so we can dive right in. All right. So it is 4:28 p.m. I'm located in Arizona, so I do this live every Sunday night at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, Arizona time, whatever you want to call it. Let me pin this goal and let's go. All right. Hi, my name is Jamie. I am somebody who used to be a licensed addiction counselor, had a midlife crisis, and became a full-time writer, but I'm extremely passionate about talking about all things mental health. And so I now do mental health. Thank you so much for the heart me. I now do mental health chats every Sunday night online. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders, and I completed my internship at Arizona State Prison Kingman. And I did work in the field for about 4 years before deciding that I just was over it. I was over it. Really not a fan of the way insurance works. Thank you so much for the tiny diny. And so I write about mental health topics, and now, of course, I talk about it here on TikTok. For those of you who don't know, I've written a fictional memoir about my life. It's on Amazon, but I'm actually doing the story chapter by chapter in a playlist here on my own TikTok page called Memoirs of a Black Sheep. This is the fictionalized version based on my life. Most of the events in it are true or inspired by true events. However, there are parts of it that I had to be creative, and I also didn't want anyone to catch a case. So we made this a fictional for that reason. All right. So hi, everybody. My name is Jamie. Before we get started, I just want to go through a couple of quick disclaimers. I am not a therapist anymore. I am not a mental health professional anymore. I no longer hold a license. So anything that we say here is just an open and honest discussion, and nothing here is therapeutic advice, and nothing here should be substituted as therapeutic advice. If you do find yourself in crisis, I'm going to recommend you dial 988 if you're in the US and Canada. And if you're outside of those places, you're going to go to lifeline.org. And if you need resources, you can always send me a DM and I will make sure to get you some resources. I'm here as a veteran, a writer, and a mental health advocate. I like to share my own lived experiences as somebody who struggles with a mental health condition, but also as someone who treated addiction issues. Trying not to say as much, and I'm struggling tonight, guys. So my goal tonight here is to start an honest conversation, not to provide medical advice, but if you or someone you love is struggling with the impacts of bullying, thank you so much for the heart me. If you or someone you love is struggling with the impacts of bullying, please reach out to a licensed professional or trusted resource. If you don't know where to look, just shoot me a DM. I will help you find resources in your area. I am here to help, and I am happy to help. All right, Grandma Wolf leveled up to level 2 in the fan club. Thank you so much, Grandma Wolf. All right, so let's get real for a second. We usually think of bullying as something that only happens in school or online, right? And I like to keep this interactive so you guys can comment and say stuff in the chat, and I will keep an eye on this. Thank you so much. So, we often think of bullying as something that happens at school or online, but what if I told you that sometimes bullying actually starts at home? Thank you so much for those roses. Bullying can start at home, right? And we just saw a great example of this. If anybody's watched the documentary Unknown Caller with Kendra Lakari and what she did to her daughter, and this is a really extreme example, or maybe a really public example, but I want to talk about maybe something that's not going to be as obvious, right? We're going to start with that case because that's the case that everybody knows. Thank you so much for all those gifts. I appreciate you so much, Jessie. So I like to make my lives interactive, and I really, really love, even if you don't want to come up on the panel when I open up for panel chat, I really love if you guys can comment, heart, emoji, whatever you got to do down in my chat, okay? So we're going to make this interactive right from the start. Do you think bullying at home hurts more than bullying from peers at school? Yes or no? Yes or no? Do you think bullying at home hurts more than bullying from peers? Yes or no? Thank you so much for the follow. Yes. All right, I'm seeing some yeses. I think bullying at home is probably even worse than bullying from your peers. Because at least if you're bullied at school, you should have the expectation to go home and that be your safe place, right? But if you go home and you're getting it at home too, like just imagine what that is like, especially for children, right? So yeah, so I'm seeing some yeses in the chat. I think bullying at home is more hurtful because of the fact that home is supposed to be your safe place as a child. So I 100% agree with that. Have you ever noticed how words from family members can stick with you longer than things strangers say? And if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, share in the chat. Thank you so much for using all them stickers. I appreciate that so much. Have you ever noticed how words from family members stick with you longer than things that strangers say? And I think it's because we count on our family to be giving us honest feedback, right? Most of the time. Yes. I have some toxic family members. I think so. The reality is, and I didn't learn this till I was an adult, I think we all have some toxic family members. And I think to some degree, we might even all have some dysfunction in our family because I learned a lot of things about other kids I went to school with as I grew up and was like, I would have never known. I would have never known that you went through that as a kid. So I definitely think that toxic family members and even dysfunctionalism is more common than we know. But what we see, especially now in the age of social media, is what people are willing to share, right? God, my 5 head is so shiny, guys. Sorry, I just did my skincare for the night. That's okay. It gives you guys all something to look at, doesn't it? All right, so if you feel comfortable, share one word that describes how family dynamics shaped you growing up. I would love to see what comes through in the chat. I also have problems with my children thinking now that they are adults that it is okay. 50-50 dysfunctional behaviors. Yeah, I think so too. I do think that there's some people that have relatively, I want to say normal, but really what is normal, right? Relatively normal childhoods or relatively normal home life. But I also think that it's more common than most of us would like to admit that we have dysfunctional homes. So yes, so do I. I am a skincare junkie and you guys are, but if you didn't follow me before and you follow me now, you're going to see a lot of my TikTok shop stuff is skincare and makeup and pet stuff. So, anyway, so I think that my family's dynamic shaped me in the sense that we grew up in a home where we went to church all the time. So we had a lot of the religious stuff, put to us, but also like there was a lot of, we keep our personal business personal. And that's not to say that my parents swept things under the rugs because they didn't. And I can say that I'm grateful for that. And I did have a dysfunctional home and my parents did the best they could. It wasn't them that was dysfunctional. I had a sibling who had a lot of behavioral issues because he got bullied at school. And to be honest, I was a bully to him as a sibling, and I'm not sure that he's ever really recovered from that. And I don't think I was as mean or as horrible as what he was dealing with at school, but I definitely think, thank you so much for the tiny dinies. I definitely think that I certainly didn't help the situation. And, I wish I could take it all back, and I've apologized, and we've tried to make amends over that, but I just don't know that you can really ever take back the words once they've been said. So story one that we're going to talk about tonight is the Kendra Lakari. Wow, you guys are awesome. You are just killing it for me tonight. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Every time I repin a new goal, y'all are just getting it. All right, so we will do some finger hearts. We'll do some finger hearts. All right, cool. Watch, TikTok's going to give me a flash goal of something like ridiculous that I can't get in about 5 minutes. So the Kendra Lakari case is something, I don't know if you guys have seen the Kendra Lakari case or the documentary. Drop blue hearts in the chat for me. If you haven't, then drop white hearts in the chat for me so that I can give you a basic background. Thank you so much. You are amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so looks like, all right, it looks like maybe there's a delay. White hearts. Okay, so the Kendra Lakari case is the mom was actually bullying her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend through text messages. And it's really complicated, especially because a lot of what she was saying was just completely inappropriate to say to kids. But people allegedly didn't know until the police came to the house that it was the mom actually bullying the daughter and the boyfriend. And she was saying some really inappropriate adult things to both of these kids. And the girl didn't find out for a while, and mom ended up going to jail. Sorry, spoilers, guys. Sorry. So, anyway, so basically, you know, she did a lot of damage. And from what I can tell, based on what I saw, is a lot of people seem to think she was a manipulator and that she hadn't been truthful in the last 10 years. I don't know, because I don't know her. I'm just telling you what it kind of seemed like in the documentary. And, you know, the daughter felt like, you know, she wanted a relationship with her mom, even still after all of that, but she's barred by the no contact order right now in place. So with Kendra Lakari, I want to start with this case because it did shock a lot of people. Sadly, it kind of brings to light things that are hard to hear, really. Kendra Lakari was a mother from Michigan. She secretly cyberbullied her own daughter and her daughter's boyfriend for over a year. She sent hundreds of cruel, harassing messages pretending it was other kids. Imagine the betrayal. The very person who should have been her daughter's biggest protector was the one causing harm. And I believe that there's this ridiculous part where the daughter finds out and she's like, I don't want to leave my daughter. Like, after all the stuff you said to that girl, and she said stuff like KYS, and I can't spell that out for you, so I'm gonna have to hope you guys can read between the lines. To her own daughter. To her own daughter. Thank you so much for sharing out the live, Jesse. Thank you so much for tapping the live, Grandma. So the emotional impact of this was just absolutely devastating to the community. Now, I've seen some hot takes that I don't know how true they are because I haven't gotten to really research it, and I saw them right before I came on, that everybody in the town actually knew it was the mom, that nobody was really surprised by the police, and they don't know why that was left out of the documentary. I don't know if that was true. I don't know if it wasn't true, but if it was true, it doesn't really matter. There's still the impact on both of those kids. And she basically destroyed this girl's relationship with her boyfriend, who was 13 or 14 at the time, which whatever. I mean, they might have outgrown each other, but excuse me. But goodness, like they shouldn't have, like, what was she thinking? Like, I don't know. And she wanted to get all protective with her daughter when the police came. And yes, I'm sounding a little judgy and I try not to be judgy, but I was so baffled by this that I just couldn't believe it. So the emotional impact was just absolutely devastating. The daughter struggled with anxiety, self-doubt, confusion, and then to find out that these attacks aren't coming from strangers or bullies, they are coming from her mom. And, you know, I think that cuts deeper than anything in a classroom. Thank you so much for the heart me, a little over 21. I think that's what I mean when I'm talking about when bullying starts at home. So I would love to hear some people's feedback on what their thoughts are about bullying starting at home, or if you have a story and you want to share a story, all you have to do is send a request to come up on the panel, and then we'll go ahead and get you added. I do ask that you mute yourself until we kind of get that going, but just send a request if you want to come up on the panel and chat. If not, you can keep it in the comments. We don't require anything here. So while I'm waiting to see if anybody would like to come up and chat, we're going to talk about a time when this kind of affects my family as well. So growing up, my grandmother was my mom's first bully. And hi, how are you, Holly? Welcome in. Uh, my grandmother was my mom's first bully, and I was probably about 35 when I finally told my mom, like, your mom is your bully. Your mom is your bully. And it just, I still don't think that she fully grasps that. And my grandmother passed away last September. I actually took care of her until she died, and I learned a lot of things that were just really disheartening because in her dementia, she couldn't hide who she was anymore. And I'm not going to speak ill of her, but I am going to keep it real. And thank you so much for letting me know. I am going to keep it real about what she did to my mother. So, some of the things that she would say about my mom through her entire life, she would say, she's always been so mean and hateful. I don't know why she's so mean and hateful. She's always been a problem. She's just like her father. She doesn't listen. She this, she that. And, my mom really desperately wanted this relationship with her mother that she just never was good enough to get. And it's weird because once grandma got so sick that she really couldn't remember anybody anymore, she remembered my mom. In fact, she often confused me for mom and would treat me like she would treat my mom. And then when she was in a nursing home, my mom is who she often would call for. She'd be like, I want to know what, about my daughter and this and that. And it was heartbreaking because it was like, you were so mean to her. Like, you were so mean to her, and now you want her to come to you. And of course, my mom did, because that's just the way she was. And, it hurt me to realize that, like, my mom's mother was her bully. And the story of Kendra Lakari and what she did to her daughter, like, it really hit home for me because it reminded me of that. And I don't think my grandma would have sent text messages, but she did do this thing I called divide and conquer. And that's where she would go around to my mom's siblings and she would say things about my mom behind their back. And then she would come to my mom and say things about them behind their back to her. And so I think, thank you so much for the heart, me. So I think, like, her goal always was to kind of like make sure my mom was on the outskirts of everybody. And my mom's very unfiltered, and she's been that way her whole life. So she would say exactly what she thought, whether it was appropriate or not. And it would really drive my grandmother crazy, to be quite honest. So my grandmother was just incredibly mean to my mom. She tore her down with words, with judgment, and with cruelty. And it's really weird. I've always thought like maybe she was a little jealous of my mom, because my mom stayed married to my dad until he passed away, and she's still married to her second husband and has been married to him for at least 20 years. And my grandma had been divorced 3 times. And I think some level of her was, upset that my mom could find happiness in her life. And it's like my mom still, even with that, wanted this relationship with her mom that she just never got, And those wounds don't just stop with one generation. This can be generational. Like, this can get passed down and passed down and passed down, because it makes me think about my grandmother's childhood and about how her mom treated her. And from what I understand, it wasn't much different. So I feel very blessed that my mom did not continue that tradition or that cycle, but it is so impactful. And, it's hard to see grown adults act like children towards their own children. And I think this is why we're seeing a lot more of these people that are going no contact with their parents, because they can't understand why someone is so upset. And my mom didn't do that. I encouraged her to do that, and she was like, I can't, and that was fine. But she did learn to set boundaries about what she was willing to listen to. Families are not equipped with some of the tools needed to effectively parent, and we pass on our trauma. Yes, I agree with that. And the goal with these conversations is to help us try to better educate the younger generations, or just better educate people in general, so we can start breaking these cycles now, because I really want to see us create change. And the younger generation is going to be where we start seeing the change. Identity, yeah. Let's see what else. Okay. So I will. Oh, you're already up here. So yeah, you can go ahead and share.
I can identify. That's what I meant to say. I didn't know it. It changed it, I guess.
Right.
Um, but my mother honestly was my bully. She was the one that would go between my family, and do that. She put her children. I don't know. I'm not gonna say now that I'm grown and I have my children. I don't know. I'm not gonna say now that I'm grown and I have my children and my children are grown. I can honestly say that I don't think my mother's ill intent was to put her children on the chopping block to have the best of everything,
Right.
but it happened that way, So, but I was the one where she would hype up mentally, and then when everybody else was around, well, why are you acting like that? you
Right.
know, and getting everybody else to look at me sideways.
Right.
And true fact, in 2015, my cousin admitted that my mother used to pay my cousins to torture me.
Oh wow.
And and I don't understand why, and her family didn't understand why either, but
Hmm.
that's how she was, and she was that type of person. Like, I have a phobia. Yesterday I was laughing, I was like, yes, I don't text. I mean, I don't call people either. You've got
Right.
to text me to talk to me because I don't trust the phone call, and I don't want to interrupt. And that I realized through therapy just a couple weeks ago, that it stemmed from my mom telling me that my friends weren't really my friends. They only gave me their numbers to shut me up. Like, that's literally how my mom would be. And
Right.
I kind of was doing that to my children until I realized that I just turned my children against each other, not willingly, but I was just being honest with them. I didn't want to hold any punches. I didn't want anybody to think I loved the other one more than that one. And you know what I'm saying? I wanted it to be freedom of speech, to
Right.
where I overstepped that boundary, to where my children disrespected me.
Right.
And because of my choices, they hold it against me today.
Right.
So, yeah, I get it. Like, the chains have to break somewhere, you
Right.
know?
Right.
I'm going to
And I
mute
think
out now.
we have had generations and generations and generations where we just see the cycle repeat, repeat, repeat. And we want to trying to move this billboard. We want to try and stop that cycle. And I mean, we're never going to be able to completely stop the cycle, but it should be something that we really try and think critically about because of how it impacts our kids, their kids, and I think also too, if you're getting bullied at home, we know that oftentimes the bullies in school are being bullied by someone else. So I think, thank you guys so much for all the gifts. So I think that that's another thing. It's a ripple effect. What you do to one person, can have an impact on more than just them. And we've seen even where you know, the person getting bullied, like it's like a domino effect and it just keeps going. It spreads like cancer, and it's like kindness can be contagious, but so can meanness, right? Both of those can be contagious. So we have to do our job to try and promote more, healthier interactions with our children. We have to do more to make sure, and my mom probably because I'm not going to minimize anything I did. I definitely bullied my little brothers. I was bossy pants. And my mom probably should have done a lot more about it than she did. But I also knew that my mom was very deaf at the time. She had a corrective surgery, so she's not now. So I did a lot of things she couldn't hear out of her earshot. And had she heard, I probably would have gotten, some sort of consequence for that. So, and I own it and I still feel bad about it to this day. I still think like, oh my God. But, then I find out my niece is kind of like the version of me. My brother's daughter is kind of the version of me I was when I was a kid. And I said, can you sit her down and have a heart to heart with her and tell her how it impacted you when I treated you like that? and why we have such a strained relationship. And I don't know if he did or he didn't. He's a single dad, so sometimes he gets overwhelmed by like everything. But I think that we also have to be accountable for things we may have done that weren't healthy. I knew it. TikTok always gives me a flash goal of heart me's, and it's like everybody's already done their heart me. All right, so moving on. So the way my grandmother treated my mom didn't just shape my mom, but it shaped me too because of the ripple effect. It's what happens when bullying. Thank you so much for the heart me. It's what happens when bullying in the family happens. It just becomes a cycle. The child who grows up being bullied often carries those scars into adulthood. And my mom has been spent her entire life taking care of other people. And I always feel like, when are you going to take a break? Like, when are you going to enjoy being 64 years old? She has just the biggest heart. And I'm so proud of her for that, because she could have been a terrible mom, but I think she gave me the mom that she wishes she would have had. And I am so grateful for that. And it's crazy too, because she didn't treat her boys like she treated my mom. And they are definitely interesting people. I'll just say that. Tapping sends out the love vibe. That's right. Thank you guys so much. Tapping, commenting also helps. So commenting a lot helps. Just try not to repeat the same comment or they see it as bot behavior. All right. So the broader reflection here is really kind of what I want to circle back around to. When bullying starts at home, it changes how a child sees themselves. It changes how they view themselves. And if they view themselves negatively, or they view themselves as, not worthy, you're going to have a higher risk of mental health conditions. You're going to have a higher risk of addiction, behavioral health issues. Maybe they don't finish school. They're much higher risk for problems, basically. And I think, sorry, I want to send you guys some gifts for coming up on the panel. I think that negative self-view can lead to obviously lower self-esteem, lower confidence, but it can also make you a target for more bullying. It greatly impacts their ability to embrace the SEL framework, which is now prominent in schools. Yes. And I also think, and what's crazy is, like, you see the bullying online with adults nowadays. My God, have a dissenting opinion and people will just try to destroy your life, right? And you think about, if that's what those people are doing online, what are they doing to their children? I always think about that. Like, what are they doing to their children? And I'm not one to judge how people parent, but I always feel like when people show you who they are, they're showing you who they are, So
I have something to add. Remember the parent on the other channel that made the facade that the rules and regulations that they set forth in their house was driven by force, and she ended up in big trouble. She's a blonde-haired woman. I don't know if
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
allowed,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know the name,
The one that
but
had
I'm
the
not,
8
I
kids
don't
or
know.
whatever.
Right, the blonde children.
Yeah. Yeah. And what she did, well, that is really complicated because they were working with a woman whose license had been revoked, and she shouldn't have been providing any type of counseling or coaching services, because and that's not to say the mom's not responsible. She absolutely is. I would never, like, I was not the greatest mother, but I would never be like, I'm going to starve my kids and lock them in a closet ever. It is so true. It is worse with their families, either receiving or demonstrating poor behavior. Yes. And we have to, children model their behavior off of who they're around, whether it's their parents, whether it's kids at school, whether it's teachers. And if your parent is modeling that I can treat you like crap and you're my child, what is that teaching the child? And that's part of the problem, I think, with bullying in schools too. They might grow up believing they're unworthy or that love always comes with cruelty. Some kids like to normalize abusive behavior because they don't know any better, so they think it's okay. And we've seen this too, where kids are still really attached to a parent who maybe horribly abused them. Um, and that's because the stability, not necessarily the reliability, but it's like, I know mom, she's my safe person, even if she's not safe for me. You can repeat it or shun away from it. Yes, yes, I agree. So I think when kids normalize abusive behavior, they think that that is what relationships look like. Oh, and this kind of ties back to, I don't know if you guys have ever heard it. This might age me, but when I was a kid, it was like, oh, if he's being mean to you, he likes you. Like, that's not actually okay, and that's not actually normal. And I think it's kind of like that concept. Others, they think they've seen that behavior somewhere, so they are continuing that behavior thinking it's okay, and then, oh, he likes you, you know. But on the flip side, they're withdrawn and quiet but exhibit violent tendencies. That's the other thing too. I almost feel like I was taught that in child development in high school. Yeah, I always feel like the silent child is the one who's more at risk than the one who's acting out, because somebody who has shut down so much and self-isolated so much can be, and I'm not saying they always will be, but they can be a ticking time bomb. Thank you so much for the roses. So home is, let's see, when kids normalize abusive behavior, thinking that's what relationships are supposed to feel like. I keep my notes on my other phone, so that's why I get lost. Sorry, guys. And others end up carrying deep trust issues into every friendship, relationship, or workplace they step into. Home is supposed to be the safest place, but when it isn't, the damage can last a lifetime. I agree with that. I was the silent type and did, but don't. Now had DID, but I had to fuse. Oh, wow. Okay. It was what we chose. And I think that's the other thing too. Bullying can be really traumatic. Like, people still have a tendency to think that trauma can only happen from, violence. Trauma can happen from things that aren't violent. Trauma can happen if you are living in a high state of fear all the time. You may not meet the criteria for PTSD, but you can still have experienced trauma enough that it keeps you on edge. Thank you so much for sharing that, Holly. Yeah, and that's what it is. And your brain has to find a safe place to go to when you're experiencing that. Like, I remember hearing the story, and I don't know if it's just one of those old myths or if it's a true story, but there was this little girl and the dad like beat the mom to death or something, and she kept saying there was a man in the room that kept her safe, and it was Jesus. And it's like, that could have been a genuine experience. I'm not taking away from that, but it also could have been a trauma response. She was so afraid in that moment, she manifested this person who made her feel safe, right? So yeah, it's a coping skill. So as I wrap this up, before we go into just open panel general mental health chat, I want to leave everybody with this thought. We cannot always control the home we were born into, but we can control the home we create. If you can't run your brain does it for you. Yes. So we can't always control the home we were born into, but we can control the home we create. We can choose to break cycles. We can choose to speak kindness instead of cruelty. And we can choose to raise children who don't have to recover from their childhoods before they can start living their lives. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from everybody here. If you're comfortable, what's one thing you wish your family had said to you more often growing up? Drop it in the comments.
I would have to say
someone else
that
here might need to hear those words. What'd you say?
I was saying that I could actually achieve something. Like, they believed in anything that I needed to do.
Right.
That's all. Like, that I could achieve something instead of saying, oh, well, what are you going to do next? Because I'm an A+ personality. Once I get to know something, I get bored.
Right.
And I move on to the next thing, so I can admit that about me. So they say accountability is the first thing, and I'm always trying to be accountable. But in all fairness, yes, I wish they would that my mother wasn't so negative and doubting anything that I did. Like she really believed anything, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think in a sense we are almost conditioned to be seeking praise as kids. Especially if you grew up in a religious home where it's like obey your parents and stuff like that. I wish people didn't believe me when I said it was all okay. And you know what? I've had a lot of people say that before, where I wish people would have seen that I'm okay was actually code for I'm not okay. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments about any of the stuff we've talked about tonight? Does anyone want to come up on the panel? I can talk mental health for hours. Like I could literally, that's why I have to give myself notes. One, so I don't get too lost and ramble and go off on tangents. I wish my kids said that too. And I think when it comes to these kind of parents, like I think if I had to pick of the two situations we talked about, right? My mom's or Kendra Lakari, right? I think my mom's situation is much more forgivable because we she still did a lot of things right, even though she was a complete rude a-hole to my mom. She did a lot of things right. And with Kendra Lakari, like she was lying to everybody about everything and like smiling in her face and I wonder who it is and let's blame this person. And like it affected a lot of people's lives. And with my mom, it affected her life, but in a lot of ways it affected her life positively. She became a better mother than the mother she had. So I think that's what makes it more forgivable. I do it, but I don't know if it's okay for TikTok. It's a bit huge. Your question, or if you want to share your story? Gaslighting does happen a lot. Um,
I mean, my mom, real early on, almost unalived me by having, I think, a PTSD episode because she had done like Hollywood, you know, where you lift someone up above the ground,
mm,
and went and I was stuck going, okay, what do I do? Everything went blurry. I said I loved her and she let
mm,
go. But she didn't look at me directly. She looked through me. There's a difference. It's like she
mm,
saw something else. And so after that, I was too dang scared to do anything, say anything, be around. I've even called the police before,
mm,
and I was too scared to answer, like actually like say something was happening. But at least
mm,
I gave him a call.
mm.
Yeah, there's some silver lining to that. I gave him a
Right.
call, but
Well, I think too, kind of going back to kids, is you brought up a really good thing that we had a discussion with my daughter a few years ago about if she had questions about the birds and the bees to come to us. We did
yeah,
not want her Googling. We did not want her listening to her friends. If she heard something, she could come ask us about it. We would not judge her. We would not embarrass her. But we wanted to have an open and honest conversation because we don't want her finding it out on the internet. We don't want her finding it out from another adult or a child whose parents.
yeah, because they're in the same age group. They don't know anything.
Right. And we have a rule, and I think I've shared this before, but I'll share it again for anybody who has kids. Jesse, I see you. Thank you for sharing because my oldest is going through substance abuse right now, and I suffer for her kids. Yeah, it's difficult. All right. Whenever you're ready. Yeah, whenever you're ready, married mama of four. It doesn't have to be today. So the rule that we have for my daughter is one, she has to have tracking on her phone. And if she's not at home, we have to be able to know where she is. And that's it, pretty much. And she's an amazing head on her shoulders, and I'll share about that in a minute. But the other thing is, whenever she's staying the night at somebody's house, the parents have to be approachable. If I cannot talk to them, or I cannot discuss, like, hey, if my kid acts up at your house with them comfortably, she can't stay the night there. It's that simple. Two, she has a code. Every time she goes to stay somewhere, we give her a code. And it's something that sounds very minute, that cannot be detected. If she texts me, we know that whatever she just said means, I need you to come get me right now. I am not safe. And she's never had to use it, thankfully. But it's one of those things that it's like that's the age that we have to live in now, where we have to tell our kids, if you need out, and you can't stay, I need you to do this
Yeah,
instead. And I say that because when I was a kid, I told my mom I wanted to go somewhere and that I had a ride home. And I did have a ride home, but the ride home, I can't remember the whole deal now, but it was a situation where I knew if something happened, I was going to be in bigger trouble than if I just called my mom to come get me. So I called her to come get me, and she chewed my butt all the way home. And finally I said, Mom, the reason I didn't go with them was XYZ, whatever the reason was. And she's like, oh. And I said, so I'm really sorry you had to come pick me up. But after that, she really was like, well, then you did the right thing. And, you know, I chewed your butt and I'm sorry, but you did the right thing. And it's because you have to have if your kids are afraid to tell you that they did something wrong, they're going to be at higher risk for so many different things.
Yeah.
You know, and there are so many people that will manipulate your kid if they know that you don't communicate with them. I did that with my now 25-year-old. He didn't spend the night, but just regular hangout. Well, you know, and I'm thinking even now, just I've always been kind of, I don't want to say a lax parent, because I'm lax in some things that people think are horrible. Like if my daughter watches a movie with cussing in it, I don't care. She's got a good head on her shoulders. I'm not going to get offended. But I had a son who we couldn't let him watch horror movies because he would have nightmares. And it's like you literally almost have to do case by case, which sucks because kids think what you do for one, you have to do for everyone. But I feel like I have to be more of a helicopter mom when it comes to, can I walk to Circle K by myself? No. Years ago, you probably could have, but not now. And if you do walk to Circle K, you need to have a friend with you and your phone with you and blah, 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 right? Still not something I'm comfortable with. I just can't bring myself to let it happen. I will walk my happy butt, whether I want to or not, with her rather than let her go by herself. And for years, till she was like 12, if she went to the bathroom, I went to the bathroom. I didn't stand in the stall with her, but if she went to the bathroom, I went to the bathroom. And I think that it's just really important. My daughters do this thing called gentle parenting. So my brother does that as a single dad. And you know what? It actually, I really think on how it's applied, because I have two children who, if they would have had gentle parenting, I don't know that they would be where they are now. But my daughter is totally a kid who gentle parenting could work for. But I would say we don't do necessarily gentle. I mean, I don't spank her, but we do like consequences and stuff like that. But my brother has really little kids. He's got 3 kids under the age of 13. And he does gentle parenting with them. And it works for them. And I think it's amazing because it would have never worked for him as a child. But you know, he has his reasons, but he also had to fight really, really hard to get custody of his kids. So I think he has like a little paranoia about that, because that's a whole other situation. I'm not going to put his business out there, but he had to really fight hard to get custody of his kids. So thank you. I appreciate that. I will be your hype man. I will be your hype man forever. But I also will be kind enough to know that if you just need an ear, I need to listen, you know. But yeah, so, and I think, again, it was an important topic that we covered tonight, because it applies in so many ways. Thank you so much, Holly, for that. Because our kids need to feel safe at home. And we know already that they can't even feel safe at school. And I was in high school when Columbine happened. And I remember being like, that would never happen here. And, you know, in my hometown, it still hasn't happened, but they've had a couple threats. And it's like, kids are being taught things in school for their own safety that I would have never imagined you would have to be taught when I was a kid. And it's wild to me. Thank you so much, Little Over 21. I see that. Thank you so much, Jesse, for the roses. So yeah, I think this was actually a really interesting live. I feel like we got a lot of interaction about everything. Does anybody else have questions, thoughts, anything they want to share?